So welcome everyone to our June 23rd episode of Create a World. I'm Janice Creneti and I have Pegotty Cooper with me, and we are really looking forward to being in conversation together. But before we start, I want to tell you a little bit about Create a World if you're joining us for the first time. So we're a community, we're a collaboration of people that are deeply devoted to humanity's potential. And people are built for community. Pegotty and I, in fact, we're just talking a little bit about cultural anthropology, and as human beings, we're built for community. When we don't have it, we struggle. And when we do have it, we can thrive. And right now, community is particularly critical because the structures that we've leaned on our whole life are going out of existence. And a lot of us find ourselves wondering what's going to be next. Create a World was generated through Tantra Mott, and she generated it as an invitation to birth new realities as we're at this critical juncture in human history. And it's sourced by this crucible that is formed by the community, the field of Tantra Mott. And in this crucible, we're exploring feelings and thoughts that have separated us from ourselves, from others, and from the richness of life. And we are working on transmuting that back to the original nature of humanity's design: unity, love, compassion, joy, harmony, and balance. Life is paradise. And one of the ways that we transmute is by asking questions from a place of genuine curiosity, not as if we already have the answers. And being in this place of genuine curiosity opens up a through line that lets each of us investigate what it is to live as our own unique and essential design. It's a really important foundation of our work here, is that each person has their own unique and essential design that we want them to be able to bring to the world. Because when we can embody that, then we can really move from a place of deep love and deep joy and give what's ours to give. But in order for us to stand in this new way of being, we need each other. And we need a safe place to get our feet back under us, to talk about the things that really matter. And we do this through the one medium that's shared across all humanity, and that's conversation. So we invite you to listen in on our conversation and create a world. So I'm Janice Creneti. I'm a teacher, I'm an artist, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach. And I think of myself primarily as a student of the human soul. I stand for our capacity as humans, our birthright to blossom as people, to contribute our gifts, to connect with each other, and to create a beautiful and life-giving world. I've spent over 30 years designing and facilitating educational experiences for people of all ages, children to adults. And that was primarily motivated by my desire to uplift the world and my conviction that education is a really potent way to do that. As an actor and a storyteller, I've stretched my own edges, and I've used theater to explore the lives of others and bring them to the stage. And I've leveraged this power of finding and telling personal stories to enrich the way that we learn and grow as people. I hold that people are whole, creative, and built to thrive, and I'm dedicated to humanity's evolution. And with me today is Pegotty Cooper. You can see on the screen, she's a certified divorce coach with an MBA from Rutgers, and she's the president and co-founder of Divorce Coaching Inc. and Specialty Coaching Inc., which are firms that train and certify individuals to become personal divorce coaches. She's the co-author of Divorce: Taking the High Road in Divorce, Simple Strategies for Creating a Healthy Divorce, and Divorce: Overcome the Overwhelm and Avoid the 6 Biggest Mistakes. She, since 2001, she has been a certified coach. She is Florida Supreme Court certified mediator. She's an Equi 2.0 emotional intelligence practitioner, a conflicts dynamics profile practitioner, an Arbinger Institute trained coach, a certified workplace mediator, narrative coach, recoach, and she has leadership experience in both Fortune 500 companies and international nonprofit organizations. And Pegotty and I actually know each other through theater and storytelling work that we've done together for a number of years. And I'm so excited to be in conversation with you today, Pegotty. So welcome.
Thank you. I am so delighted to be here and to be talking about all the things that we're going to talk about.
So start by telling us a little bit about why, given all the various types of coaching that you've interacted with over the years, how did you find your way to this idea of divorce coaching?
Well, I had been a coach for several years, and I kind of my real passion was adventure, and I decided my first coaching was Midlife Adventure was the name of it, and I would take people on ropes courses and scuba diving, and and put them in challenging positions so that they could then see what stopped them, and we could work with we could work together. That was going along okay, but it wasn't great. And in 2008, I think that's when things sort of started to falling apart in our economy. I was thinking about how else we could expand coaching, and I said to my husband, Randy, you should become a financial coach, because everybody has the money story, and it would be really great to have your expertise, bring that to people who are really, struggling with this notion of scarcity and abundance, and so he went and he did get certified, and he came back. At the time, he was a financial planner, and he was also a mediator and a financial advisor, a financial analyst for divorce. And he came back and he said, "Oh my goodness." And I went, "Oh, good. We've got a new arm we're growing here." And he said, "This is the missing professional in divorce." And I said, "In divorce?" And he shared with me why he thought that was so. And then he told me a story. And he told me the story of the day he had been picked up at school when he was something like 11 or 12. And his mother picked him up and his brother, and they had his sister in the car. And she took them to a whole new place to live, which was 20 miles away from his neighborhood. And he was heartbroken. I guess he was 14 because he was going into middle school. And he was so distraught. All of his friends that he'd grown up with in this very close-knit community where everybody could walk to school. It was in Detroit, Michigan. And he was devastated. Where were his friends? Where were all of his classmates? And so he said to me at that time, "I never want that to happen to another child. I never want that to happen." He said, "My parents were the foster poster parents for how not to do divorce, how not to do divorce." And it really moved me. And I said, I understand the calling. I understand the calling, and that this is a mission." And he said, "And I really want you to help me with it." And I said, "Well, maybe somebody, we know lots of coaches. I support you, but I don't know. I've got this whole world of now leadership coaches. I was coaching people who are association executives because I had been one for 13 years. And so, but they started coming to me and saying, I need, the handwriting's on the wall. I need a resume. I need career coaching. Do you do that?" And I said, "If you need it, I do it." And so it wasn't much of a stretch because I'd been a hiring manager for a long time. And so I began to work with them in that way, and saw that when you work with people solving problems that are recurring problems that people have over and over again, or that are pervasive, and they really struggle. I mean, they lose their confidence, they lose their footing, and they just don't know what to do. That is a worthwhile thing to do, right? And so Randy brought up divorce coaching, and I said, "Well, that is like career coaching, definitely." And so we began to look around and see who could train us as divorce coaches. And it turns out that nobody could, because there wasn't such a thing. And so we began to take what we had learned on many different fronts. I like to bring things in from all different places and see how they connect with what I'm doing now, and see how to use those things. And so that's what we started to do. And we brought in a lot of, one of the things I did, because divorce coaching is about making decisions. It's defined actually by as a dispute resolution process. It's on the American Bar Association website. It's defined as a dispute resolution process designed to support, guide, and motivate people going through divorce to help them make the best possible decisions for their future based on their particular interests, needs, and concerns. And I said that, that I'm surprised to hear that it includes decision making. And I said, if it's about decision making, I'm going to really figure out a way to simplify decision, approach decision making in a simple way. And then I met through ASAE Chip and Dan Heath, who wrote a book called Decisive: How to Make Better Decisions at Work and at Home. And I read the book, and it had 4 pitfalls that people make. And I said, those are exactly the pitfalls that people make in divorce. And so I called them to say, can I use your material? And they said, we don't get it. What does this have to do with divorce? And I said, well, it's pretty related, but can I use your material? I'm not telling you the secret. Anyway, so that's how so we started to bring together all of these things to fulfill that mission of helping people make the best possible decisions for their future based on their particular interests, needs, and concerns. So we also had to ferret out what are their needs and concerns. I have always been a champion of the human spirit, and I believe that everybody has gifts and everybody has strengths. And sometimes the ironic thing about people is that they have strengths, and then when people invites them to use their strengths, sometimes they get greedy and they say, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that for," or they say, "I don't have time," right? Or "I'm not going to do that for you." And it was like, wait a minute, if you have a gift, it's easy for you, right? It's really easy for you to use that gift because it's a gift. And so we began to really kind of look at, even in divorce, how people withhold things that are easy for them in favor of doing, in favor of punishing other people who really need to use their gifts or need to have their gifts as part of their partnership. And so that's how we started. We put it together. Somebody said to me, so we had now we're in 2010, and I said, I want to start this in July. We've got to start this in July. This was somewhere back in March, and I had contacted 2 people I knew who were marketing people, and I said, I got to do this. I've got to put this together by July. What do you, can you help me? Can you help me? I don't know much about the internet. I don't know much about, we're going to do this online. We were doing it all online. And they said, oh, you can't possibly do it by then. No, September, maybe January. And I said, it's going to happen in July. Watch me. And I put together a class of 4 people, but it was 4 people that, now we could put a stake in the ground and say we're having a class. And we gathered together some other people. We had an attorney we were working with. We had a therapist and a parenting coordinator, and we kind of pulled them together and said, what do we really need to, what do we need to cover here to help, and understand where the boundaries are, because we also knew we needed to be very clear about the boundaries so that nobody's thought we were trying to be junior therapists or junior attorneys. So that started our adventure, which has now been going on for 12 years.
And talk a little bit about how the community that you created has blossomed.
Well, the community that we have created, and we had no idea about what was going to happen. I figured we would have coaches all around the United States. And then we started to find people from Canada wanting to come here. And so, and then as we began training, and it just sort of started evolving. Again, it was all online, so it was very accessible to people, and we had a website. And then came, Australia and New Zealand, and I think New Zealand was the first country outside of the United States and Canada. And so this woman from Australia had this vision that she wanted to bring, she wanted to help people through their divorce. She'd had a terrible divorce herself. She owned a vineyard, and she wanted to really do this as part of the offerings that she offered under the umbrella of her estate. And then it spread to Australia, and then at some point we got people from Great Britain, and then of course the biggest surprise to us was quite a number of people. Well, we have a handful of people from Saudi Arabia who are divorce coaches, and I met somebody from Saudi Arabia who was a coach because I was involved in ICF leadership, and I went to a conference they had for leaders somewhere, and a fellow came up to me and said, "You do divorce coaching, don't you?" And I looked at his name tag, and it said Saudi Arabia, and I said, "Yes, I do. How could that interest you?" Meaning, I know you don't have divorce in Saudi Arabia. And he said, "No, you're wrong. We do. We have two paths for divorce." And I did not realize the cultural tsunami that was going on in Saudi Arabia at the time, at least in some arenas, right? They wanted to be more up to date with what was going on in the world. And so they started giving people some freedoms, and that turned into quite a number of women. Particularly, we have a couple of men, but mostly women who wanted to really help other women struggling with divorce to become divorce coaches. I mean, to become, to make it through their divorce. And one of them has now become a divorce coach. So we have now second generation, or first generation, I guess you would call them, first generation coaches who have had a divorce coach are now coming to our course for training because they want to do this too. And so that's the story of how we became a community. Starts with really people struggling with the whole process of divorce, and in many ways losing their communities. Because when you start through divorce, you find that your communities aren't as reliable as you thought they were. Can I talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first one that you really see is the friends and family community. And, the friends and family community, really happy to tell you all about all of the things that you should be doing, right? Oh, if you say, "Oh, I just don't know what to do," they see that as an open door that says, "Oh, listen, I got to tell you what I did in my divorce. You got to do this too. And by the way, we never really liked that guy that you're married to, or we never liked that woman that you're married to. It's not. It doesn't prefer any gender, right? It's just whoever they're talking to. I never liked that person, and so let me tell you what you should do. Let's figure out a way to really get vengeance. Let's be vindictive in this whole process, shall we?" Not helping people at all to sort out the things that they really need to sort out. And so, we recognize that that's sort of a normal state of mind in divorce. Your whole world has been turned upside down. The marriage that you were involved in, which you believed may be a forever status, situation, suddenly dissolves. And it might dissolve it might dissolve, and you might be the one that ends up having to deal with doing something about that, or it might dissolve and somebody told you, hey, you know, it's over. I want a divorce. Um, and so all of the people that you needed to have support you and to sort of be a sounding board for you are too busy telling you what to do and too invested in that. And then you end up maybe listening to them and finding yourself just going down the wrong path. So you really want to find, that's where we show up as coaches, is that a coach provides a safe, patient, non-judgmental space where the client can just show up. We allow people to be who they are in this process with all of their story and their upset and their blaming and sometimes victimhood, because we know that that's just that's the result of having the rug pulled out from under you and everything that you thought was certain becoming uncertain. And more importantly than that, what you saw as safety is gone, right? And so when we feel unsafe, we start responding in ways that, hopefully are we are safety seeking creatures. And sometimes that means we cocoon, sometimes that means we get aggressive. We don't show up being our best selves. We don't show up being who we are at our best. We show up, sometimes being our own worst enemy. And so your friends who are trying to be there in the way that they understand friends to be, they're going to tell you what to do, give you all of the advice, and then they're also, going to agree with you about everything that you say, so that they're not helping you to say, "Ooh, maybe you're making some assumptions here," or maybe we could step back and kind of look at the bigger picture, or whatever is helpful to be said, which is to listen, right? Just to listen, because when you listen, you give people, you give them their being, right? I mean, you just allow them to be who they are, and then they say, "Okay, here I am. Who do I want to be? How do I need to show up in all of this?" And so when a client comes to us and says, "Just tell me what to do," we know that that's not the open door for us to say, "Well, let me tell you what to do." It's really to help them figure out what it is that was important to them, what it is that is central to their concerns in the divorce process, what it is that they really, want more than anything. What is it that they're longing for? And then we help them to think about not only what do they long for here in this process, but we also help them to think about, what do I want in the longer run, longer term, which is in the next chapter. And so we're always focusing on, whether the clients come to us and they want to focus, we still have to say, what does it look like on the other side of divorce? Because we know that divorce is a negotiation. And what you need in this next part, in the next chapter, you really need to advocate for in this chapter, so that you can take what you need or get some of what you need, and not be attached to the things that are not going to help you at all in the next chapter, right? Like, yeah, all of those small battles that you want to win, that aren't going to make any difference as you create your new identity. So, so there's another really important community that sort of abandons you. And your greatest moment of need is your faith community. And many people in a faith community count on people supporting them, like helping them to find themselves, find their relationship with their, creator, again, because they're feeling, they've lost the connection. And the people at that moment, communities of faith often say to them, no, we don't we don't think it would be good for you during this time for you to be serving on this committee. We don't think it would be good for you to be, that seat that you have through your pledge, that really belongs to this family. It's like, really? And by the way, we don't think that we really want divorced people here. It's an offense to what we believe in. It's a it's a sin. It's dishonoring everything that we're about. And one of the things that we've seen in all of this is that it's really not about the writings, the scriptural lessons that says that. It's the people and their rules and their norms that say that. No. And so sometimes that community just can't really adapt. They can't say it's okay. We don't so and if you're a mother with 4 children who's now trying to figure out, what do I do with these adolescents and teenagers? And you say, let me find the single parents group in my church. The singles group is mostly over 80 and mostly with walkers, and they're not helpful at all in that process. Now, I'm making some blanket statements. There are some churches and there are some denominations that are very helpful, but there are a great number where people feel just really abandoned by their faith. And it's a crisis is a time when you often look for the meaning of life. And you want to do that inside a faith community, perhaps that you've grown up in, or inside a faith community that's willing to explore these things. So that's another community that kind of fails, and it's not there when you need it. And I've seen that happen as for many years. I worked with a colleague way back when I lived in Michigan, and I remember him coming and saying he was heartbroken because he'd just been told he wasn't part of the church anymore. And I said, because he said he was going through divorce. I told them I was divorcing. I came seeking support from them. And they said, you're sorry, you're out. I said, wow, isn't that when you need your church, your faith most? So, and then there's another community that suddenly people are thrust into in the divorce process. And that is this whole community of divorce professionals, attorneys, mediators, parenting professionals, people who deal with domestic violence and financial people, financial advisors and real estate people, right? And all of these people, they know their stuff. They're really good at the stuff that they do. And they're really, and they want to, grab you as a client, but they don't know how to speak your language. They don't know how to be the bridge between, the client who knows nothing about this. And, the legal process feels like something that speaks a totally different language, has a really high cost of admission, right? And you get in there and it's like form after form after form after form, and you have to start doing all of these things. So it's overwhelming. It's just totally overwhelming to the client, and they really need a connector. They need a connector between the divorce professionals that really they really know their stuff, and most of them are just really committed to it. But they also are faced with having to find which of those am I going to hire, and it's just an overwhelming proposition. And so again, as divorce coaches, we have to help them to sort out what is it they need, and do they really need to hire an attorney right now? because, you know, you can go to an attorney, you can get information about what your rights are. Going to into battle, armed with an attorney may not be the best thing, or settling amicably with your spouse if that's what you want to do. And so how do we get there? What's the best way to do that, and explore different options? Because, you know, mediation is a very viable process. If you've got two people that are willing to sit down, they may disagree, but a skilled mediator can really help them to take turns and understand what the other person is saying, what the other person is feeling, and sort of begin to say, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that was the impact I was having on you. And maybe to talk about how it is that you can be at least better co-parents together if you have parents, if you have children. And so that's the other community that seems like it's just intimidating and overwhelming, and you know, everybody and the client is sitting there saying, oh no, this is not my fault, right? This is not my fault. I'm married to a narcissist, or I'm divorcing a narcissist, and my attorney is treating me wrong, and the judge is really withholding things from me, and you feel like a victim. It's easy to feel like a victim, and that's not how we want clients to be going into the next chapter of their life. We want them empowered to be able to have a voice, to find a voice, to have a voice, and to be able to advocate for themselves and for their children, and to be clear about what is most important. They don't know everything. They don't need to know about assets and liabilities and property. What they need to know is what's important to them in terms of stability for the children, or in the case of parents that have special needs children, they've also got to be focused on this suddenly having to plan not only for today and tomorrow and next week with their child, but also way into the future and maybe forever. So many different communities that can offer support to people in divorce that are not really helpful. And so people find themselves very, very, very alone. I am on my own. There's nobody here that I can count on. And so that's why being able to provide this safe space where you can be who you are, and you can really focus on what your needs are and what's important to you, and discerning all of those things so that you're much better equipped, is so important.
So, and talk a little bit then about the expanded community that they find themselves in when they actually do something like divorce coaching.
So one of the things that's really important to offer as a divorce coach is to offer support groups, right? So we have divorce coaches who are part of a larger community of divorce coaches, right? And then they are also going to create community within their environment for people who may not have support, any other support, and who desperately don't want to be alone. So many people who go through our program have been divorced already. They have been through this journey that I've just described. They've been through that journey, and now they say, you know what? I need to find a way to turn this that I'm doing, that I've struggled with. I've got to turn this into something that means something. And so they come to, they say, I would like to do what this person did for me, which is be my sounding board and thinking partner, so that I'm not alone when I struggle with all of the decisions that I have to make, that I can still have an attorney for all my legal advice, and I can have all these advisors, but only on an as needed basis. And all along I've got divorce to balance, children to balance, work to balance, maybe household to balance. And all of these things feel like they're just overwhelming. So I'm not taking care of myself. So, you know, uh, so the bigger community of divorce coaches has lots and lots of resources because they come from all different walks of life. Somatic healers, body workers, financial people, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, all of these people, and attorneys and mediators and therapists, and they all come, with lots of different resources and different modalities for helping people to heal. And so, there's lots of opportunities to collaborate with each other and really create things that are beneficial for the clients, for the people who are now struggling with the divorce that you struggled with 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And one of the things that we have to do, we know that we have to do this, is we have to begin to have them speak differently, right? One of my favorite quotes is Dr. Seuss. He said, "When bad things happen, you have 3 choices. You can let them define you, you can let them destroy you, or you can let them make you stronger." And I don't think anybody really wants to be defined by divorce. I know they don't want to be destroyed by it. And, when you begin to focus on the next chapter, you now begin to see what some of those possibilities are. So we have to engage differently with them depending on what the task at hand is, right? So they come to us and they're overwhelmed. And there's this story like you won't believe. It's a never-ending story. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it's talking about who did this to me and who did that to me and who's to blame for that and how ashamed I am of this. And I've got secrets I can't tell anyone. And so staying in that story doesn't do anything. And I'm sure that you grew up with the same kind of information that I did, or similar information. And it was like, if somebody's just got to get it all out. They got to vent, right? They got to vent and they've got to get it all out. The problem is that venting just sort of reactivates everything. And so it floods their system with all of the fight and flight chemicals, right? We're going to get ready for battle. And as a result of that, it takes a while to like calm that down. And if you're in a state of constant stress, it takes even longer. And it takes its toll. It's bad for your health. It's bad for your driving. It's bad for your parenting. And it's certainly bad for making important decisions that are going to last for a long time. And so, we've got to just interrupt the story. Got to say, "Excuse me, I heard you say all of these things that are really important. I heard you talk about, your children and your house and your car and, the difficulty in working with your spouse and your concern about money and finances. And where do you want to start? Where do you want to focus? We can only focus on one thing at a time. Let's start. We'll deal with all of those things, but where do we start?" And so now we've said that's the end of that story. And now we've got to really begin to focus on a different story, right? And a different way of coaching them. So, we have to get a little bit transactional because often that's what the court needs. They need some transactional information. They need to have the financial affidavit and they need to have all of the details about your life and your spending and your income and your children. And ultimately, you also have to figure out how are we going to co-parent together. It's not like we are going to have to be able to just sort of say, break it, we're done, because we've got to continue as co-parents if we have children. And so we need to begin to, you know, help them to work through that relationship, which is very tumultuous, right? It can be very adversarial. And if people have each gotten an attorney, it becomes more adversarial. I hate to say it, and everybody recognizes that this is what happens, because an attorney's responsibility is to zealously advocate for their client. Zealousness doesn't really have a place in family law, because you're pitting mom against dad, or yeah, whatever the two parents are, right? You're pitting one parent against another parent, and what happens is that, you know, they find their relationship is unworkable because so much animosity has developed over the course of that. I'm going to win. I'm going to accuse you of all kinds of awful things so that I can be right and I can get what I need. So we've got both sides generally doing the same thing, or one side doing, you know, being the bully, being the powerful one, and the other person just sort of rolling over and saying, just, I gotta stop. I gotta throw in the towel. I can't do this. Just give me whatever. Just be fair. Just be nice. And of course, that's not what the attorney wants. They want more for the client. So yeah. So we have to help them move beyond that anger and those accusations, and we have to help them recognize that they are triggered every time that they're triggered. The conversation that they started talking about, right? Like, we're going down the path this way, and the trigger comes in and it knocks you off course, and all of a sudden you've made a turn. And the turn has gone in a totally different direction. It's now about whether you're a fit parent. It's whether you have any morals. It's whether you have any sense about you. And you're on the defensive, or you're on the, you're on the aggressive side. And we have to help them to rewrite that narrative about how awful the other person is, how much how they're demeaning you, and we have to change it so that that's not what keeps you contained in this battleground. But you have to begin to think about, okay, whenever he says this or whenever she says this, I make up the story in my head about that. He or she is a selfish individual. They never think about anybody else but themselves. They're dangerous for the kids, they're whatever it is, right? And it may have, or they're totally inflexible. And so you have to now rewind that story and say, okay, well, let's look at that, because that's not really supporting you in moving forward, right? Like, every time you get triggered, it ends up as just this confrontation, and you've got hot buttons that are just dueling with each other. So how do we make that, how do we get you back on track to focus on what it is that you need? So we have to help them recognize what all of these triggers are, that they're where they make up a story. And if we all make up stories, right? Whenever somebody says something to us, they may not even have recognized what they were saying to us was going to cause a reaction, but it causes a big reaction. If somebody tells me I'm not included in the decision making about my life, I'm going to say, what? Right? Or to feel like you're in control, the other person says, I got to tell you what to do. I got to control you so that I can have some certainty. So we have to help them to rewind that story to say, what is it that you really want to have? What is it that you want to have in the longer term? On the other side of this divorce, what do you want to have? You want to have a flexible arrangement with co-parenting so that you can both have a degree of flexibility? Okay. So whenever he triggers you by demanding something or accusing you of something, what do you say? Now what do you say instead of like, that son of a gun, that selfish person? He doesn't deserve anything. You have to say, we both love our children. We want to have flexible arrangements so that we don't put them in the middle. And that's what I'm really committed to. And so that helps you to respond differently.
So let's talk a little bit about how coaching can help people step away from the negative and really get into that more transformational space that is possible, because major things like divorce can actually help you come out a lot stronger on the other side. So how do you see coaching as really shaping any response to any significant challenge of our life?
So this has something to do with, a little bit has to do with the way our brain is wired, right? Or the way, all of the different ways in which we look at things. So what happens in divorce is that the client says something and the advisor takes it at face value, right? Takes whatever they said at face value. That's what they're going to do, or that's what they want. And what's really going on is that the client has said something, but it's gone through a whole bunch of filters. So it's started with, and this happens in a nanosecond, right? Like I make a response in anger, and I have a belief about the statement that this person just made, and then I have perceptions, right? Like I've taken only the data in that I really want to see, and what I've seen is he is always doing this to me, right? Like this is just one of the 150th time that he's done this. And so that makes me start thinking about that data from my beliefs and my in what I'm seeing from the outside world, or from my body as well, right? My gut is telling me these things. Then you begin to make up meaning about that, like or motive. Like he's always out to get me. He's always out to get me. That's what he does, and that makes me feel sad, angry, frustrated. And then I make a decision, and I decide that I'm just going to push back. I'm going to assert myself and absolutely no. The answer is no. And then I make a decision, and then I say whatever I say, right? Or do whatever I do. And that happened in a nanosecond. But if you go back as a coach, if you go back and you say, let's do kind of an instant replay on that. What happened? What did he say? What did you say? And then begin to kind of walk backwards through that and say, okay, so when he said that, it sounded like you were really angry. You were really angry when you made that decision. And then what was it that you were thinking? What were the thoughts that were going through your head that made you angry? That he's really out to destroy me and the children. And what did you see? What have you been seeing that has told you that has really informed you about that? And it's like, this is the behavior. This is what he's doing. He hires an attorney. He has the attorney go after us for everything. And I'm powerless. Belief, right? I'm powerless. I can't do anything. And so each of those things, believing their beliefs and their perceptions and their thinking, the meaning, and the the uh, motivation behind what was said, and the feelings, we can work with all of those. That's what we do. We really begin to work with which one of those, and usually it's believing, but the beliefs and the perceptions that are really the things that we start working on first. You know, what do you believe? How do you look at this person, right? Like, what do you see in this person? Is this person a good father? Does he love his kids? Well, yeah, he loves his kid, but he hates me. How do you know he hates you? You know, you've been married for 20 years. What has happened? And then we begin to ask questions that might inquire about what part have they played in this? It's not what's their fault is not the question, right? But what part have they played? And when they can begin to reflect and own some of what's going on, then they can see how they're willing to change something. So that the next time that comes up, they're willing to shift something. They're able to see it. So if you say, okay, I'm going to assume that he's not really evil, that he's got some good, that there's good and there's evil, right? And I'm going to assume that there's some good. And if I listen to him when he's talking, I might hear some of that good. And then I could acknowledge what I agree with him on. We're in agreement about what's important for the kids. Great, that's really important. Thank you. You know, because I know that they love you as a dad, right? They want to be with you, but they're wondering what's going on. And so now we've looked at the perception and the believing, and now we can help them to start thinking differently, attributing different motives, and now they feel differently. Now they feel a little more magnanimous, right? Like, okay, I don't have to put up my defenses. I don't have to really fear you that you're out to get me. Maybe we could work together, if only just with the kids, right? We're not going to be married, but we've got the kids. And so those are all of the tweaks that we can make, but the people that are advising them are really only looking at asking them to say something different or make a different decision. And we as coaches can't do that. We have to help them walk down the path of self-discovery so that they learn from exploring what it is that they want to have happen, that there may be some obstacles, right? The attorney says, oh no, you'll never get financing. A coach would say, well, let's walk down the path and see how we can make that happen. So who do you need to talk to about financing? Who's financing your house? And
Yet to me, that's the significant power of coaching is helping people expand the choices that they have available to them, by helping them also own what they really want. Because I mean, I've experienced this myself, and I've experienced it with a lot of other people, that I think oftentimes we're waiting for somebody to give us permission to want what we want, you know, to be able to say, I really want this. I really care about this. I would really like, you know, in a perfect world, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, in coaching, there's this space to say, this is what I really want. And in exploring that, and then also looking at what's around you through a clearer and more objective observer, that you start to see choices that are available that never even appeared on the radar before.
yeah, we often give the example of, you know, you go into a car dealership, trade in your white car that you've always had, and you get a fast red car, right? And then you get out on the street, and all of a sudden you notice, wow, there are so many fast red cars out there. It's amazing, because your focus has suddenly shifted, perhaps to reinforce what you've done. But when you get focused on something, right? And focus is an important piece of this, right? When you get focused on something, your filters are shifted, right? And you begin to see many more possibilities that are related, as you just said. Yeah.
So, you'd sent me a text earlier where you sort of talked about what you saw as the different aspects of coaching in this process. Do you want to speak to that?
So when we're talking with coaches about it, we talk about you can be a transactional coach, right? To focus on what's the problem, what steps does the client have to take to get through that problem, and what do they need to do next? Just help them to become sort of project managers, perhaps discover other resources. So those are dealing with the transactions of divorce, right? The next step is when people are emotionally attached to something, right? They're focused on something that really isn't what they're really trying to accomplish. But they're focused, but it's the bigger so the example is when you so we call that transcendent coaching, right? So we've got a problem, like and this is what the 6 biggest mistakes are about. I'm going to throw in the towel, right? I'm going to throw in the towel. I understand that you have no energy, that your resources are drained. That's really, it's time to just say, I got to move on. So that's the immediate problem, but there's a bigger problem, which is if you let everything go, what's going to happen? But that's not what the client's going to respond to. So we say, on the other side of divorce. So, you deserve to have a break. And on the other side of divorce, let's just talk about what's on the other side of divorce, because it will be over soon. It will be over soon. What is it that you want to have? What is your life? What do you envision your life like on the other side? Paint me a picture. Paint me a picture so that in a way you can feel some relief now, and you can really kind of get into that place of just feeling really good about your life again. What does that look like? We're not leading people astray and saying, you can have that. We're saying, okay, now that you've painted that picture, what do you need back? What do you need now? What have you got now that you could take with you? It would really make the difference. So we transcend this problem of, I'm exhausted, and we help them to focus on the bigger picture of like, I'm going to have a life. I'm going to be able to make my own choices. I'm going to be free to make some decisions I'm going to unearth those dreams that I had that I really put aside because I was marrying into joining lives with another person, and I was willing to give up my career for his career, right? Often happens. Or mine became less important. And so we so that transcending that problem just doesn't focus on the problem at hand, because, well, there's Captain Jack Sparrow, I think, said, it's not the problem that's the problem, it's your attitude about the problem that's the problem. And we say you're thinking about the problem that's the problem. And so if you can shift your thinking, if you can shift any one of those things about your thinking, you can begin to see something, the problem becomes not that problem. The problem is the bigger problem. And that's what
So
we've tried to
Pegotty,
help
we've
our
got
clients with.
just like about 30 seconds to wrap up. So tell me about.
So transformational. Everybody that's been through this journey has now been on their hero's journey. What have you learned? What are your strengths? And now you're coming home to your authentic self. What are you bringing back? What did you learn? And now who are you becoming? And now when you share that with other people, who can they become because of who you've become?
Yeah, and to me, that's the power of coaching.
It is.
Thank you so much for being here with me today and for having this conversation. And I feel like there may be more conversation we have in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. I went past. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about divorce
And
coaching.
if you're watching the recording, just know that if you're interested in more information about what Pegotty does, that'll be included on the recording. So